Welcome to another episode of Open World Chat. I am one of your hosts, formerly of Bleeding Cool, now generally just of my couch, John Odom, and my co-host, Jim Dandino, has absconded with the Open World Chat safe and headed for the Green Mountains of Vermont, and we have the National Guard looking for him. There is a reward, by God, stock options in Open World Chat. If you find him, please give me a call. And he's missing out today because our guest we're going to be talking to is Alex DiVincenzo of many, many, many things. Okay, Alex, for one thing, you're the publicist and social media manager of Screambox, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And that was actually when I reached out to you as I got one of your press releases, and I thought, Screambox, we should find out what's going on at Screambox. And so I sent you back an email, and you were very gracious. And then, oh my God, you gave me the rest of your resume.
I was like, I'll talk about that and 30 other things I do.
Right, exactly. So, anyways, we'll make sure you can get your paycheck covered here by talking about Screambox. But first of all, why don't you just rattle off that resume for us so I don't have to do it again and screw it up?
Oh man. Okay. So yeah, my regular job is working for Screambox, which is a streaming service I'm sure I will be promoting liberally throughout this conversation. But I also contribute to Bloody Disgusting. I run a blog called Broke Horror Fan, which highlights horror movie merchandise. And through Broke Horror Fan, we also release modern horror movies on officially licensed, fully functional VHS. And in what little spare time I have, I am also an independent filmmaker, so far specializing in shorts of the horror variety.
A couple of which I saw, by the way, so I want to talk to you about
yes, them. Let's do it.
I have some thoughts. You're kind of living the dream. To be honest.
I try. Yeah,
it's a good dream, not a horror dream. So yeah, actually, why don't we just start talking about Screambox?
Absolutely.
What's going on at Screambox? He said, I got to be honest with you, I didn't know about Screambox until I started getting your press releases, and that's actually what.
That's good. I'm doing my job.
Yeah, totally. And I was like, well, cool. What's first of all, it seems like kind of a tough time to get into the streaming business, but I guess we'll talk about that. What is Screambox? What are you promoting for him these days?
Anything and everything. Basically, Screambox is a horror streaming service powered by Bloody Disgusting. We're owned by the same parent company, and the Bloody Disgusting team helps, with curation and promotion. And it's basically we try to shine a light on movies that you either can't or won't see anywhere else. We have a pretty deep and growing well of content that's exclusive and or original through Screambox, as well as old favorites, indie stuff. Obviously, we're not the only horror streamer out there. I'm a big fan of Shudder. I've been a Shudder subscriber since very early on. But I think there's more than enough room for both of us and even other streamers if there were to be. I know it's a tough sell that if you're already dropping money every month on one streamer to add another to your library. But I would encourage you can try 1 month for $5 and give us a shot to see what we're all about. We have a lot of really cool exclusives, both recent and upcoming. Terrifier 2 is our biggest title to date. That was a Screambox exclusive. Now it's currently on Prime if you haven't seen it yet. We just dropped Living with Chucky, which is a really cool documentary about the Child's Play franchise, made by the daughter of the special effects artist who's worked on the last 4 or 5 Chucky projects. We have The Outwaters was like a nice, was a well-received movie we released earlier this year, which is a found footage movie. Pennywise, The Story of It is a really cool documentary about the making of the 1990 version of It. And our next big release is Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund story, which is a documentary about Robert Englund, of course, who played Freddy in the Elm Street movies. And that will be released on June 6th, which is also his birthday. I think I got everything in there.
Yeah, there you go. Well done. Definitely earned the paycheck there. Yeah. So Screambox got scooped up by Cinedigm, right? Is that the parent company a few years ago?
That is correct. Basically, Screambox existed in different iteration in a kind of its own small bubble for several years. And when Cinedigm picked it up, it kind of became Bloody Disgusting's under Bloody Disgusting's purview. And that's about the time that I came on board.
Mhm.
So the original owners of Cinedigm are no longer involved. Some people, if they have heard of it, might have not to the highest regard. If they were a subscriber in the early days, it was very, I mean, it's always been very affordable. But their content, which I hate to use the word content, it's so impersonal, but I mean, that's the industry term for it,
Sure.
was left a little bit to be desired. They basically catered a lot to kind of no budget indie stuff. Not wrong, we still do a lot of that, but maybe they weren't focusing on the best titles. It was more um quantity over quality, shall we say.
Uh-huh.
So we've been working on kind of trying to show people that, there's a lot more to Screambox than that. It's a whole new, not only a whole new team behind it, but we have a whole new uh user interface, whole new app. Everything's bigger, better, faster.
Yeah, it must be just a real sea change to get that kind of corporate backing behind you. And I cannot say Cinedigm without hearing that voice in my head. Cinedigm. But anyways, if I slip into that by accident. But yeah, but this seems like this is a tough time for streamers. You guys are up and comers, and it sounds like you're upping and coming, which is great. But a lot of the other streaming services are hurting these days. Is this well, how's this going to shake out in the next few years? What's the business plan here?
I mean, yeah, it is a difficult time to kind of address the elephant in the room. Like I mentioned Shudder. I know they've been going through some hard times. And
Yeah.
we only want to see them succeed. We think that's the best for, not only is competition breed invention, but also, like I said, I'm a Shudder subscriber. I watch their stuff all the time. The difference between us and them in the more corporate sense is their parent company is AMC, and they have to deal with, a TV network, which is even harder to make headway in right now.
Right.
So we don't have Cinedigm deals with film distribution and stuff. So we're in a little more comfortable spot in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also competing with, obviously in the horror space, there's a couple, but in the broader spectrum of streaming, there's 20 different major streamers out there, plus a bunch of smaller ones. And everyone's just kind of vying for attention. It's becoming increasingly difficult, plus working against, social media algorithms and the like, just to get people to know you exist, let alone to actually subscribe and kind of get to know your content. But we're so far just kind of, walking the straight and narrow and keeping our heads up with the best content we can produce, the best movies we can put out, to get people excited. We release new and original stuff every month, but we try to every few months have like one, big title that'll get people talking. Like the current one we're promoting is the Robert Englund documentary.
Mm-hmm.
We've also found like a small niche in documentaries, in the documentary space, horror documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned the Pennywise one. We have documentaries on Creepshow, on Fright Night, on Pet Cemetery. We have one coming up on RoboCop later this year. So yeah, it's really just not an easy time, but also kind of an exciting time, because I think once all of this does shake out, those that are left standing are going to be in kind of a good and exciting position to, see what happens next.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have Jim here, because Jim follows this industry more than I do, and he has some very strong thoughts about.
I would be interested. You got to have me back sometime, so
definitely. Absolutely.
I can hear his thoughts.
Unless you really screw it up right here.
Well, yeah. Let's see how the rest of this goes.
How are the numbers going? Viewership,
good. Yeah, we're growing pretty steadily. Like I said, when we do the big titles, we see giant peaks, and then it kind of tapers off. Terrifier 2 was definitely our biggest the month we dropped that, which was it was Halloween of last year. That was our most significant growth. Also, our biggest increase in public awareness in general, because obviously Terrifier 2 received a lot of publicity beyond even the horror sphere. So that's been very exciting. Like I said, then we had The Outwaters. That was our next big one, and we also did a theatrical run with that. Um, and we have another, I can't say the title yet because it hasn't been announced yet, but we have another big one coming up later this year. Also one I can mention, Onyx the Fortuitous, which is, if you're familiar, it's like a viral internet character. He's extremely funny. He made a feature version with this character. And the movie also has Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator. And it's almost like if you made, I'm trying to think of how to describe it, like a Beetlejuice, like Goosebumps, that kind of stuff, like almost like a kid horror movie, but for adults, if that makes any sense. It's just a blast. It's really fun. So I'm really excited just for people to see that as well.
Jeffrey Combs, he's done so many things. I'm a massive Trekkie. He's been heavily involved in Star Trek, and we do joke about how never an episode goes by of Open World Chat that Star Trek doesn't at least get mentioned. And
I'm glad we could.
He will always be Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator.
Yep.
Won't he?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, always be
That's
the
thing.
top
Yeah,
of the resume.
he's done, and I mean Barbara Crampton too. She's reinvented herself in the last decade or so. She's done some incredible work, also working as a producer and behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, I just can't look at them and not see Reanimator.
I know, right?
Just probably my favorite horror comedy. I love that movie, and it's also streaming on Screambox, as a matter of fact.
I'm the only person who liked From Beyond better.
I mean, I do appreciate From Beyond very much, but Reanimator edges it out.
Yeah. Well, I realize I'm the minority on that. Well, cool. How did you end up getting this gig? This seems, like I say, you're living the dream here. What a great gig.
Yeah. I started contributing to Bloody Disgusting. Basically, Brokar fan has like a decent, for what it is, online following, a reader base, predominantly on Twitter, and I'm very active on there. Friendly with John Squires, who's the editor in chief of Bloody Disgusting. We kind of came up in the horror blogging world around the same time. And I had just pitched him an article out of the blue. Basically, Brokar fan, I enjoy doing it very much, but it's my not it's not paying the bills. Let's put it that way. It's very much a passion project.
Sure.
So I don't do a lot of long form writing on there. It's very much just like, oh, here's a cool shirt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this idea. It was to try to make a long story short, even though I'll ramble through it. I made a random tweet about Sarah Michelle Gellar being how like she's not brought up in the conversation about being a scream queen very much, even though she has the credentials.
Yeah.
And it got some like minor traction on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine was like, you should really like turn this into like an article. So I did. I wrote it up and I was like, I emailed it to John at Bloody Disgusting. I was like, hey, would you be interested in running this? And I figured if not, I would just run it on Brokar fan, no big deal. But he picked it up, he ran it, and he was like, let me know if you have any other pitches. So I started pitching him first every once in a while and then pretty regularly. And now I have a weekly column there, as well as random interviews, reviews, hidden gem pieces, basically every week. And through my relationship with Bloody Disgusting, they were looking for someone to handle publicity for Screambox. As I said, they were going through this kind of reinvention of sorts. And John brought up my name because I've in the past I had also done publicity for independent horror films and some brands like Fright Rags is one of my main clients. So John brought up my name to the higher ups. They talked to me about it. I started working with them on that, and around the same time they were like looking for people to do some behind the scenes stuff like minor graphic work, which again is another thing I dabble in, or like some video work. And somewhere in that conversation they came back to me with a social media position that they were like looking to fill. They were like, we know you're into this, we don't want to just hire somebody, a social media guru or whatever they call themselves, who can like try to engage but fake their fandom. Like we want a real horror fan in there who can, have conversations with people and make recommendations that people will believe. Um, so that's yeah. So I that just kind of fell into my lap, and really couldn't be happier because I'm on Twitter all day anyway. At least until it implodes.
I wasn't going to
Which
say anything, but I
yeah,
was wondering what you were going to say.
it's becoming scarier and scarier by the day.
You know, it's
Um,
good fit.
yeah, yeah, right. Scary, not in the fun way though. But yeah, so it's really fun. I mean, I've made like, friends and like recommendations and like got people to subscribe through just like talking about movies. It's a blast, really.
You're the total horror polymath here.
I try,
Would have said jack of all trades, but I always forget the back end of that
Yes,
phrase.
which is exactly what I am. Yes, master of
Kind of a
none.
put down, yeah. Polymath. We'll stick with that. It's fancier.
I like it.
And you're making your own stuff. You're doing your own films.
Yes, I try. I basically I used to write for a horror site when I was in like high school. And I saw this was to date both myself and the story. This was in the MySpace days. And
Ah,
I saw that there was a local movie in production called Beg in the Boston area, which is where I'm from, on MySpace. So I reached out to the filmmakers, like, "Hey, I have this horror blog. Do you think I could like visit the set and do like a set visit?" And they're very very gracious. They had me out. It was a really cool experience. The movie had a bunch of like horror convention staples, Tony Todd, PJ Souls, Tony Moran. It was a really cool experience, fun little indie slasher. But prior to this experience, I just thought I wanted to write about horror movies. I wanted to be a journalist. But as soon as I stepped on that set and kind of saw everything and like the world of, if you've never been on a movie set, even like this no budget independent one, um, it was very, I don't know, just like a light bulb went off. Like I was like, oh no, I thought I wanted to write about movies, but no, I want to make them. Like these are my people. I feel belonging here.
mm.
So I worked a bunch of like, free gigs on whatever I could find locally. Doing whatever I could. Production assistant on up through various departments. And eventually got the confidence to make something myself. So that was I don't have the numbers in front of me. I want to say 2016. I made my first short called "The Horrors of Autocorrect," which is like
I didn't see that.
kind of a spoof. Yeah, it's kind of a spoof of or send up to the opening of Scream, but obviously it's about texting instead of a phone call.
Mm-hmm. I did see Trouser Snake.
That was my second one. So
okay.
you saw some of the early work.
Which looks like
yeah,
it was a blast. Everybody
it was. Horrors of Autocorrect did really well on the festival circuit, and it got picked up for like online distribution from Crypt TV, which is co-owned or was at the time. I don't know if he's still involved, but by Eli Roth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just exciting to me to like have somebody who has real experience in the industry kind of validate my work.
Yeah.
And I've just never looked back since then. I still do a bunch of crew work whenever I can on like friends' productions. But I make like one or two shorts a year, usually just, self-funded, shot in a day or a weekend. Often, confined into, one location or a few. And I eventually do want to branch out from that, but I've worked on enough and I've seen enough, independent productions that are so, I'm trying to think of how to say this diplomatically. Their heart's in the right places. The passion is always on screen, but sometimes it feels hindered by its budget. And I don't know. I'm very protective, I guess, of my filmography, if you can call that, even though there's no feature yet.
Mm-hmm.
I want to come out of the gate strong is my biggest
Yes.
thing. It takes so much time, money, effort, resources, calling in all the favors to make even a short, but particularly a feature, that I don't want to do it until I have an idea that I know I can pull off for the right budget, till all the pieces fall into place. So that's my main goal in life, is to make a feature and then, maybe eventually get even paid to do it. But even just an independent one, So I've been working my way slowly towards that since that first short. Um, a
Oh, you're
bunch of them,
okay.
I should say, a bunch of the shorts are online if anyone's interested. If you look up Lockbridge Productions on YouTube, that's where you can find most of them.
Well, I was looking at one while you were talking about budgetary concerns and working around budgets. What jumped into mind was your short BS, which was very pared down.
Yes, so that is definitely my most the smallest of small
Mhm.
in all regards. That one is particularly unique because my friend TJ Frizzy, who co-wrote and stars in it, is the only actor in it. Basically came to me. He had helped out on a bunch of my stuff. One of my best friends, and he was interested in pursuing acting. Um, and basically, in lieu of putting together a bunch of fake scenes for a reel, we decided to kind of write this. He had the story in his mind already, and we beat it out and turned it into a script and made this little short that it's like I said, it's just him on screen, basically telling a story, but hopefully engaging. So it was a fun little challenge. It's him, like I said, sitting in a room in a chair, one
Mhm.
camera on him, telling this story that's vaguely a little Lovecraftian, little sci-fi, little horror. Um, and it was, like I said, I was like, I want to make you look like a good actor, but also I want to challenge myself to see if I can make this interesting in, whatever it is, a 4 minute short of with one actor. And I'm proud of how it came out. I think TJ looks very good in it, and I think the movie came out pretty interesting for what it is.
Oh, it did. And it says to me something about that one in particular said horror fan to me, or at least Lovecraft fan.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I mean, obviously Lovecraft has always been intensely influential, but especially in the last 10, 20 years, his influence on horror is just it just keeps going up. But that's the story. But you actually created it was a Lovecraft narrative. It was the guy sitting there saying, "Oh, this terrible thing happened to me." Very much in the style of a lot of the stuff he wrote himself.
Yes, you absolutely got it. I the Lovecraft is obviously a complicated subject in terms of he has some very outdated and bigoted beliefs in his writing.
Oh yes.
Yeah, to put it mildly. But I really appreciate, honestly, more than his work itself, I appreciate the kind of the cosmic horror that he more or less created through his work, and kind of the films and filmmakers that it inspired, excuse me.
Mhm.
Like we said, Reanimator is obviously, very loosely, but a Lovecraft adaptation. And even the more recent stuff, Color Out of Space, I thought was a really cool one.
Oh, it was great. I love that. Trying to get
And
as many
just
people to see that as I can, and no one's
yeah,
listening to me.
that was one we actually got to do on VHS, which was cool.
Oh, that's cool. That's excellent.
Um, but yeah, I appreciate kind of the cosmic dread of it all.
Mhm.
And I think we could use more of that, particularly right now where cinema in general feels kind of homogenized. It's kind of nice to be like, here's something that you've never seen before, or like presented in a different way than you've seen it before, at least.
No, definitely. You pulled it off. And it's funny, we did have just a throwaway thought here about a year and a half ago. We had the founders of the HP Lovecraft Historical Society on. We were talking about the art versus artist debate.
Yeah.
And we we talked about Lovecraft. We got into talking about Joss Whedon. It was crazy. But anyways, I'm guessing I have a sense of where you land on that argument. So
Yes, I mean,
yeah, what do you say when you get
I mean, it's complicated, and I think it's not difficult to be respectful of everyone's opinions, but um some people might lead you to believe otherwise. But like, I mean, I've never it was definitely Lovecraft inspired, but not a Lovecraft adaptation. I think
right?
if I was to adapt Lovecraft's work directly, I would certainly do anything that I could to kind of push back against his bigoted beliefs,
Hmm.
whether it's, casting people of color or queer or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's the best approach to it. And it's one of those things. I mean, art versus artists in general is obviously a broader topic that's, I find it very easy to ignore it if it's someone whose work I'm not already invested in. Obviously, if whatever XYZ actor comes out as problematic, and I'm not already a fan of their work, that's like, okay, I don't feel any need to support them in the future.
Mhm.
If it's someone who it comes out after the fact, there's a little bit of an internal struggle there. Will I continue if it's a movie? Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite movies. I don't want to put any money into Roman Polanski's pocket, but I also don't want to take away any of the accomplishments of anyone else who worked on that movie.
Mhm.
It obviously takes a village to make a movie. Um, so yeah, it's weird. It's a weird topic, a weird time. I wouldn't go see a new Polanski movie, but I've bought Rosemary's Baby a couple times on different formats. So it's like I don't know. It's a weird, weird area.
Well, yeah, and thanks for sort of digressing with me there. Like I say, your
Anytime.
resume is broad enough that it's like, I feel like I want to talk about anything. So in the interest of talking about anything, I just go straight to the heart here. What is it about horror?
Oh
You know?
man.
Yeah.
As a viewer, it was definitely originally the thrill. I started with the slashers, Michael, Jason, Freddy, and kind of built out from there to other slashers, and then like Romero and Cronenberg, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and it was really, yeah, just kind of like the thrill of the hunt, the chasing of that dragon, like the
Mhm.
fun of being scared. And I was somewhat of a late bloomer for as far as horror fans go. I hear stories about people who are like, "Oh, my older brother showed me The Exorcist when I was 7," or what
Mm.
have you. I didn't get into it till I was like 13, 14. Um, I still found them scary at that point. So
Mhm.
that was like the excitement in the beginning. And I've since come to appreciate very much how diverse and malleable the genre is. You can basically do anything with it, and whether it's combine it with comedy like Trouser Snake, or you make a social commentary, or you can spin anything on its head. You can combine it with action, with sci-fi, with thriller. Um, so that's a big part of it. Also, the diversity of voices who have made and continue to make horror. I mean, Mary Shelley more or less invented the sci-fi horror mashup with Frankenstein. And now more than ever, we're finally getting more diverse voices involved in the filmmaking side of it.
Well, we really are. There's been this just explosion, particularly of women
Yes.
in horror, and it's this most recent generation, and it seems to have really supercharged the genre quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's exciting because I mean, you don't, at least I don't, some people might, but I don't want to see and hear the same stories over and over. Which if you keep, you know, as a straight white guy, I feel like I could say if you keep hiring straight white guys, they're going to keep telling straight white guy stories.
Mhm.
So it's exciting to hear, a new voice, a new perspective.
Yeah, and
Whether
also
it's
just I would imagine just as a filmmaker, regardless of your demographics, just to have such a greater range of depth in the genre that you're working is then going to come around and inform what you're doing and just
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, 100%. And it's not. I mean, there's to me, obviously, it's hard to get people to watch. When you drop whether it's a short or a feature, because there's so many other things competing for everyone's attention these days.
Mhm.
But the cream usually rises to the top, and regardless of, like you said, regardless of demographic, it's just exciting to see new things. As much as I love, I'll still go see every new Scream or Halloween, but it's there's something so exciting about like sitting down to a movie you have no idea about, never heard of the filmmaker, and then just being blown away.
Somebody you didn't mention, and I'm going to mention just because I've been into horror forever, but the artist who made me an actual sort of horror geek though was probably Dario Argento.
Oh, okay. I'm a big Argento guy. Suspiria is one of my top 10.
Oh yeah, and I don't think Suspiria is even his best stuff.
What do you consider his best?
Oh man. I'm going to tell you and you're going to laugh at me.
Uh,
Okay. Right now, and this is just right now, my favorite I think is The Church.
oh,
Isn't that
well,
weird?
yeah, but
Where'd
that
that
he
come
did.
from?
That was a production, right? He didn't direct that, or did
Oh,
he?
was that a production?
I
Oh
think he produced
no.
it.
Well, it sure was in his style.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because that was. Oh God, what's his name? The guy who did Demons, I think, directed that, which
Oh,
I
that
also
makes
love Demons.
sense. Oh
But
man.
they're
Oh, see,
both produced by Argento.
now I'm an idiot. I'm gonna have to cut all
Oh,
this
look at
in.
that. Losing your horror cred.
Yeah, yeah, sure did. Jeez. But yeah, I mean that whole era though, man, the early 80s, late 70s, all that stuff. I'm old. If you haven't noticed, I'm old. So
You carry it well.
oh, thank you. I see the gray in the beard here. So where do you see yourself here? You said you want to make a feature film. Where do you see yourself going with all this stuff in a few years? You're young. You're not that old. You joked about being old, but you're young. You're a kid. You got lots of years ahead of you. Where do you want to be?
I mean that's the ultimate goal is to be in the industry making horror movies, making cool stuff that people haven't seen before. Um, I do a little bit of everything in terms of filmmaking. I write, direct, produce, edit, sometimes score. But my main goal is to be a director. So that's yeah. I mean, I'd love to do a feature. I mean, in a perfect world, I would either make a short that someone sees and they want to give me money to expand it into a feature, or somehow get into a room with the right executive who you know gives me a shot. It's a pipe dream, but
Yeah,
it's something
you're
I'm
making
working
the
toward.
connections. Sounds like you're making all kinds of connections.
Yes,
And
I do have a leg up there where I have a lot of friends, at least within the horror community, if not the industry at large.
yeah, and is it fair to say that horror film is kind of a growth industry right now? It seems like
Oh yeah, big.
more
I
and
mean,
more.
it's since the pandemic in particular, it's like the one box office guarantee almost. That doesn't have to be an IP or a sequel or whatever. You can still make money on original movies if they're horror.
Is it has it ever really not been a moneymaker? This is,
I
I
that's
mean,
that's also true.
yeah, I mean, there's been such a sort of snobbery towards all things genre for so long, but I think horror's gotten it pretty bad, and
Yeah, I mean, it's
always
always
been.
kind of been looked at one rung above like the adult film industry for whatever reason. Not that there's anything wrong with adult films either, but
That's for another show.
yeah, right. But yeah,
Maybe.
I mean, I don't see what like the horror genre is. It's obviously it's launched so many careers, both in front of and behind the camera. If you look at all the your Johnny Depp, Jamie Lee Curtis,
Mhm.
all got their start in horror, and then so many filmmakers. Sam Raimi went on to make. We wouldn't have the MCU probably without his Spider-Man movies. And he started making movies with his friends in his backyard. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, I don't I couldn't explain why that is the case, that it's such kind of frowned upon in the industry. But I do think, as you kind of alluded to, that it's finally starting to get a little bit of respect, if only for the reason that it makes money. But hey, I mean that's a start. At least producers are starting to put money behind interesting voices.
It is, I think, and it's following the same pattern. It feels like it's taken longer for horror to get serious respect than it has for like sci-fi or even to, make that smaller, the superhero genre.
Yeah.
Which, therefore the cycle was some people started recognizing good quality, and then you had these sort of cranky critics who had to be kind of dragged along for the ride until they finally realized it wasn't cool to be totally anti-sci-fi or comic book. And now that seems to be happening with horror. Horror seems to be the weasel critics are straightening up or shutting up.
It's about time.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people find you online? Where can they find all your stuff, all of Screambox's stuff, your whole resume here? Where can we find you?
All right, let me go down the list here. So screenbox.com is where you can sign up. $5 a month, even cheaper if you do an annual plan. And it really is, if I wasn't working for them, I would still be subscribed. It really is an incredible value for all the cool stuff we put out. Screenbox TV is our Instagram and Twitter handle, which I run. So if you do end up signing up or are thinking about signing up and want to kind of see some stuff we've released recently or what we're promoting, or if you just want to talk movies, get some recommendations, I'm always down for that. BrokeHorrorFan.com is my other site where I highlight horror movie merchandise, and we're Broke Horror Fan on Twitter and Instagram. The Instagram kind of doubles as my personal one because I didn't want to manage two Instagrams. And my personal Twitter is Alex's Legend. Again, hit me up in any of these spaces if you want to, talk movies, talk horror, recommendations, recommend me something. Always down for a good conversation about movies. And you can read some of my writing at bloodydisgusting.com. Again, if you follow my Twitter, I always retweet my publications there. And yeah, Lockbridge Productions on YouTube is where you can watch some of my shorts. My most recent one on there is The Nurturing, which is my favorite one I've done so far. I think that was the one that most closely resembled the vision I had in my head for what came out on the screen, which is always exciting. And that's kind of my most straight head-on horror one. A lot of my earlier stuff was more comedic. So that's out now. Reverberance, which is one I co-directed with TJ, the guy from Be Us, will be up very soon. That's like an ASMR style horror short, a little creature feature. And then my new short I'm currently in post-production on now is called Pocket Money, which is not really horror. It's like a heist movie with a comedic twist. So I'm kind of expanding. Excuse me. So I'm kind of expanding my horizons a little bit there. So we'll see. We'll see how that one lands. But yeah, excited for everyone to see it.
Well, that's very cool. And yeah, I'm already thinking about half a dozen things that have a dozen reasons to have you come back on and some topics to really, really dig into. So we'll consider this your introduction to the open world chat crowd here. And thanks for coming on, Alex. And we'll definitely see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Our theme music is by Christopher Piatek, and the sound engineering is by John Odom. So if the sound sucks, it's my fault.